Thank you very much, Udayji. It's an honor, and I'm also humbled to be here. Om Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. We go to the incident of Narada, who is well known for his vast learning, when he approaches Sanat Kumara. Adhihi Bhagavaha. He has a very brief request. Please teach me. Sanat Kumara Rishi, to respond to Narada's request, Sanat Kumara naturally needs to know what is the level of knowledge that Narada has, the circumstances that have brought him there, and also his reputation preceded him. Narada was this hugely knowledgeable person, and such a person wants to come and learn from me. So he asks him, tell me what you know, and I will tell you tat urdhvam, that which is above it. So Narada starts with his very long list. Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, Atharvaveda, Itihasa, Purana, Pitryam, Shraddham, Rashim, Rashim is like maths, Daivam, natural phenomena like mineralogy, Vako, Vakyam, something like logic, Ekayanam, ethics, Deva Vidya, etymology based discipline, Brahma Vidya, Bhuta Vidya, Kshatra Vidya, Nakshatra Vidya, Sarpa Vidya, Devajana Vidyam. So all the different fine arts like music, sculpture, painting and so on. And then Narada concludes saying, Aham mantravit, I am a mantravit, I know mantras, I know the text. Na atmavit, I am not a knower of the Atma. And in absolute recognition of his problem, he says, Aham shochami, I have a lot of sorrow. And it has been heard by me, Atmavit shokam tarati, the knower of the Atma crosses sorrow. So anyone who's really knowledgeable understands the limitations of his knowledge. Anyone who is really accomplished also understands the limitations of his accomplishments, and Narada was clearly one of them. So this is a very important line when he says the knower of the Atma crosses sorrow. Atmavit shokam tarati. Then of course, as the seventh chapter of Chandogya Upanishad continues, Sanat Kumara teaches Narada and tamasas param darshayati, shows him the other side of darkness. In other words, bestows him with self-knowledge. Now, sorrow is the word that I want to dwell on a little bit, because the knower of the truth crosses over sorrow. It seems like it is presented in psychological terms. The gain of the knowledge seems to be presented in psychological terms. Even in the Gita, when Bhagavan Krishna starts the teaching, he starts with Ashotyananvashochastvam Pragyavadamscha bhashase gatasuna gatasunscha nanushotanti panditaha. So ashotya, that you are grieving for that which is ashotya, should not be grieved over. And then of course we see in the 18th chapter he closes by saying ma shuchaha, do not grieve. So people who want self-knowledge, why is it being presented in words that might be describing the condition of the mind, is a question for us. Of course, after saying ma shuchaha, Arjuna responds very beautifully saying nashto moha smritir labdha. My moha, my confusion has gone, and I recognize my true self, my true nature. So shoka, moha, etc., like that we see across the Shastra. At different points in time, the gain of self-knowledge sometimes is used, psychological terms are used to describe, which brings us to the role of psychology in Vedanta. So this was the topic that has been given to me, and I'm going to treat it little differently because I want to unpack the word psychology a bit. So psychology is a loaded word. Why? Because generally modern psychology is what comes to mind, and it is a very new discipline of knowledge. It's just about 100 to 150 years old. And so the term as we understand it is really modern psychology, or in many ways it is Western psychology. And so it is very important to understand how that discipline came about. Just one or two things I want to talk about it, and how psychology in Vedanta is born of the vision of the Shastra. And so the way in which psychology is used in Vedanta is very, very different vis-a-vis modern psychology. And we want to be very clear about it, because I'm sure there are many people, like how I was when I was very enamored by psychology in my teens, and that was part of the reason why I pursued it. And I said, hey, if I cannot figure out God, then I might as well figure out human beings. Okay, so we have to see what psychology can do for us, and we also have to be clear about its limitations. So I want to talk about 5 or 6 areas where I talk about modern psychology vis-a-vis how psychology is used in Vedanta. The first area is exclusion of God in modern psychology versus Bhagavan in the sanskriti. Now we must understand that modern psychology, much like science, grew from the necessary division of the church and the state. So Descartes actually formulated a phrase called laws of nature. Okay, very clever. So what he said was, the body operates on material laws, the mind and the soul operate as per the church doctrines. So that's the business of the church, and we'll take care of your body mind. And by calling laws and principles as laws of nature, he basically threw God out of the picture. And this perspective started to grow and gain more popularity. Newton added to it, and he mechanized the creation as a work of God, all right, but he also called it laws of motion and then energy and so on. And he recognized, yes, this cosmos is a creation of God, but he's not necessary for its sustenance. So again, he also threw God out of the picture. Then Galileo, Kepler, all of them, they added to it, and they reduced the presence of God from the world into almost a point of nothingness. So this is part of the reason how modern psychology evolved, that laws and principles to treat the mind, thoughts, behavior, emotions, and let's keep God out of the picture, because that's religion, and that creates problems, because we're talking historical perspective, Abrahamic religion, and the problems that came with it in the Western world. Now, when we look at Bhagavan in our sanskriti, what is my living experience even today in the 21st century? Let's say in the morning I want to go for a walk. Of course, as soon as I wake up, we have so many prayers we chant, right from touching the floor and so on. Anyway, I walk out of the house. What do I see? I see next to the neighbor's door a murti, and there is a garland that is there. Then I walk further towards the park, the walking park. I see another woman doing a pradakshina around the peepal tree. Then this jogging park I go to, one very nice feature I must share is that there is a Ganapati Murti just next to the park, a little at a distance. So most people who come to the park, before they start their walking, jogging, they will look in the direction of Ganapati, and then of course they will do their namaskar and then they start. Then of course as they leave also, they turn around and they look and then they do namaskar. So in the jogging park also namaskara. Then I am huffing and puffing and walking in the park. By mistake, I almost kick someone. Wasn't intending to, obviously. And then what I do is immediately, it's almost unconscious, I do this. Like not only do I say sorry, but I do this. So that, that you are a manifestation of Bhagavan. That's the principle. So you please, I'm sorry, it's not only that I hope I didn't hurt you, but I will not touch anything with my feet because it is a sign of disrespect. Then I finish my walk. As I'm walking back, the shops are opening up and the cashier is there. I can hear the bells tingling and the person is doing aarti. And one of the most fascinating things I find in different parts of India is almost any shop you go to, the care and the beauty with which every shop will have a tiny altar. And some place, whether it's an electronics shop or it's a beauty parlor or it is a kirana shop or whatever it is. So this recognition of Bhagavan is very intrinsic to the culture, and therefore the laws of nature, quote unquote, are presided by Bhagavan. This understanding may or may not be entirely clear for people, but there is a vague understanding. And so in the way in which psychology is used in Vedanta, we start with seeing that Bhagavan is very much pervading the sanskriti. Then of course, because these are very profound carriers of meaning in our culture, we then inquire into what this is about and so on and so forth. Sometimes we are told to shut up, sometimes we get an explanation, sometimes we look for a YouTube video. But nowadays, more and more, we are seeing that people are seeking to know and are getting more informed. The second area I want to highlight is the exclusion of dharma in modern psychology versus dharma as the framework of human pursuits in the culture and also in Vedanta, okay, in terms of how we pursue artha and kama. So of course we know dharma is a very profound word. Right now I am just limiting myself to the explanation of it being values and principles. So in the way in which modern psychology evolved, because God was out of the picture, so religious living, kindness, compassion, justice was de-linked from religion. And again, Nietzsche, okay, in the 1880s, German philosopher Nietzsche, he secularized the word values and de-linked it from religion. He used it in a pluralistic sense of moral beliefs and social attitudes. And by doing that, what he did was he made values as a subject of choice. That, oh, if you practice gratitude, wonderful things will happen. If you practice kindness, then it's a nice thing to do. So everything became subject to choice. and therefore subject to use, abuse, and no use at all. And so we see in modern day living, Kimaham sadhuna karavam, Kimaham papam karavam iti. These mantras from the Taittiriya Upanishad still ring true. Why did I not do the right thing? Why did I do the wrong thing? I should not have done, so on and so forth. So the whole day, if we just look at some of the chatter that we have in our minds, we're often thinking, should I have spoken to my mother-in-law in that way? Maybe I could have controlled my anger a little bit. Or I just went on and on talking to my son. I didn't even ask him how his day was. I just rattled. Did you eat your tiffin? Did you do your homework? Did you do that class? And so on and so forth. So this reflecting on, am I doing the right thing? Or the regret that comes from knowing that maybe we did the right thing and then we are trying to do prayaschitta or trying to make amends, or even the sense of hurt and betrayal. Maybe I am very self-righteous, maybe I always do the right thing, or I tried to do, but a lot of other people, they didn't do the right thing towards me, and so I have hurt, and there is betrayal, and so on and so forth. So that exclusion of dharma in modern psychology is there, and that's why therapy can go on for years and years and years, because it's all about my thoughts, my desires, my wishes, and so on and so forth. Okay, whereas here we have this brilliant, timeless Sanatana Dharma, which helps me to understand better and to take corrective action in terms of how I want to move ahead in life, what my priorities are. And it's very clear what dharma is. It's very clearly laid out. Even if I don't study Dharma Shastra extensively, just that I don't want to be hurt, you don't want to be hurt, I don't want to be humiliated, neither do you, and so on and so forth. It's common sense, and the beauty of dharma is it is there in every human heart. So our Itihasa and Purana are showing us the dynamism of dharma, because dharma of course is not static, and by having that as a framework for how we live and how we engage with people around us, there is a lot of harmony and there is a lot of peace. And that is how psychology has been used in the culture. When I interact with my master's psychology students, a lot of them lament, saying that, oh, you know, very few people come for therapy and what shall we do, and so on. And I always have to remind them that just see how psychology is pervading the culture. The way in which support systems are there, the way in which support factors are there, the resources that every person has, because linked to Bhagavan and Dharma, it is huge, really huge, and that which cannot be negated, you know, of course subject to proper understanding. So I did present a paper on this in the Swadeshi Indology conference 2 years ago, where I said that the title of my paper was Indian Psychology is Incomplete Without Dharma and Ishvara. So people who want to access it can check my website discoveratma.com, and then you will find it. Okay, third area. In modern psychology, there is an emphasis on individuality, and the way in which we use psychology in Vedanta is we see our interconnectedness. Now, like I said, you know, individuality, where I stand apart, the drik stands apart from the huge drishyam. It creates a sense of overwhelm, alienation, loneliness. And also we have to understand that because of the 2 world wars that took place, there was a huge need for psychological help, for the war veterans who had gone through disaster, and so a certain structure developed. Because how can this psychologist, whose only disaster was that she broke up with her boyfriend, understand this army veteran who has had to bury the bodies of his comrades? You know, of course sorrow is sorrow, but the degree of sorrow, the extent of sorrow, the context are very different. And therefore, you know, the formalizing of positive regard, non-judgmentalness, validation, acceptance in the helping relationship developed. And so, you know, in modern psychology, yes, there is an attempt to get over the loneliness. In fact, I think in the UK there is a minister for loneliness, because it's recognized as a very serious problem, and which not only affects people psychologically but also affects the economy because of the mental health resources that are required. But I see that this loneliness issue is of course affecting us also, but it need not, if we see our interconnectedness, which is highlighted in Dharma and Vedanta. So in whichever part of the the culture that you are, or the world that you are, we see that we are very deeply connected to the manushyaha, the people, and the environment, plants and animals, bhutaha, and of course our ancestors, pitra, as well as our rishis, teachers, and definitely connected to the devatas who are blessing the different phenomena that we are experiencing moment to moment. So Pancha Mahayajna, this sacred responsibility, the sacred duty towards these 5 factors, even before it becomes a duty or a responsibility, if I see how I am connected with everyone, when the people around me fulfill their responsibilities, my rights are met, and vice versa. And so therefore, if I simply ask the question to myself, what am I giving, what am I receiving, I will be very clear about where I stand with the people in my life. Further, if I ask, what more can I give them? What more can I receive? You know, both questions can be asked. Of course, the Bharatiya sanskriti is such that we focus more on doing for the other, because it's a duty-based society. It's not a rights-based society. Now, of course, things are changing, but when I say it's duty-based, that the recognition that I am someone who can contribute, and we have these very beautiful stories like even the squirrel's contribution to Ramasetu. You know, these stories, they are so deep and so rich in meaning that no one is so small that they cannot contribute anything, and no one is so big like Bhagavan Rama that the person cannot receive your help. So from having a sense of isolation and loneliness and struggling with oneself in modern psychology, the way in which psychology is used in Vedanta is there is an emphasis and a vision of seeing one's interconnectedness with everything. So all are Pancha Bhautikas, all born of the 5 great elements, and that's what we are relating to. So on a daily basis, when I focus on what I can give, what I can contribute to the people in my life, to the pitras, it may just be a prayer for them. To the plants and animals, it might just be watering one plant. To the way in which I preserve the knowledge, I honor the knowledge by studying and so on. And of course, a prayer or a puja, I'm just acknowledging the relationship with the devata. So if we have these very powerful carriers of meaning as rituals in our day-to-day life, then where is the scope for feeling isolated and disconnected and so on? So this interconnectedness is very much there in the way in which psychology is used in Vedanta, okay, because it's used differently. Then in modern psychology, of course, there is an excessive identification with the mind. The mind has to be fixed, okay, and so one is constantly battling with the status of the mind, and hence there is a lot of self-judgment. Whereas in Vedanta, we very clearly see that the mind is just an instrument. So yeah, it doesn't need to be fixed, it needs to be understood, and we have to work with the mind. I am significant. To arrive at this, I will try to manipulate my mind and fix it and recover from trauma and deal with the irrational beliefs and manage my emotions and so on. I am like this lone wolf who's trying to do it all on my own. Whereas in the way in which psychology is used in Vedanta, it starts with the term antakarana. Such a word which reveals the sophistication of the thinking, that the mind is an inner instrument, it's not you, even if the person has not come to Vedanta. Antakarana, inner instrument, but to use an instrument, somebody has to be there. So we move in Vedanta, of course, you know, I have the honor of addressing senior students. We move from seeing the mind as an instrument to seeing that I am free from the conditions of the mind. And while modern psychology focuses a lot on the embellishing of individuality, right from our arati, we are talking about resolution of individuality, because I can see the mind as an instrument when I resolve this I, me, mine, okay. So when we do na tatra suryo bhati na chandra tarakam, okay, what are we saying with that camphor? That camphor is such a beautiful symbol of the individual, that while it is that consciousness that illumines everything, tameva bhantam anubhati sarvam tasya bhasa sarvam idam vibhati, that everything shines after this. And in seeing this truth, the individual has resolved, and all that is here is you, Ishvara, or if Ishvara is understood as one Swarupa, then all that is here is the Atma. So in my modern psychology, there is a disease called I must feel good all the time, okay. It's very compulsive, it's obsessive, and to feel good all the time, I have to give in to my raga dvesha. There is no other way. Whereas the way in which we use psychology in Vedanta is that emotions are just a means to an end. They are not an end in themselves. And so the typical eternal question, why don't I feel I am Ananda, is where the person actually has identified so much with Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, Anandamaya. Okay, it is not a kosha for them. Because Panchakosha Viveka has not been complete. So I am indeed my mind, I am indeed the karta, the doer, I am indeed the experiencer. So I take a stand on Manomaya, Anandamaya, Vijnanamaya, and then I say, but why I don't think like this? But why I don't feel like this? Okay. So again, you know, if we have that kind of a question, then it's important we do Panchakosha Viveka thoroughly, because for a jnani it is truly a kosha, okay. But if it is it's not seen as a kosha as in it is an error where one has done adhyasa on, you know, this what is Pancha Bhautika. So to see it as that, and that it is the glory of Ishvara, this entire emotional landscape. But the emotions, the thoughts, they are not an end in themselves. And therefore, very much like the river, if the river has a very strong sense of identification with the form, then the river will of course say, I started, you don't know how long my journey has been, so much trauma I have to go through, people keep dumping things into me. And then there are some places where they are trying to dam me. So it's a very difficult life. I can't tell you how difficult my life has been. And so the whole struggle of becoming significant, or somebody please give me some validation, somebody please give me some acceptance, this is what modern psychology promotes and encourages. Whereas, and it's good actually, like it's important to get over the trauma, it's important to get over what was unresolved and say that yes, I am significant, but then our work doesn't end there, because then we can be ready to shift our attention from the form to who we really are, tattvataha. So this, a lot of people get into this judgment of the mind. I mean, we are doing it all the time, but even after coming to Vedanta, they are always judging themselves on the basis of the mind. And this is something that is to be avoided, because the truth is that you are free from your mind anyway. Okay, so naturally you are free from the ways of the mind. But that is not to say that we don't have to work with the mind. Okay, but it's it's a very beautiful dance where there are you are working with your mind, because it's an instrument that has been given to you. You see it as given, you see it as Ishvara Vibhuti, and in that the resistance to the ways of the mind really drop. So then you stop using psychology in the modern psychology sense. And what is also good about modern psychology is that cause and effect is seen. So there is no condemnation. The therapist will not condemn you, but will help you see that there was a reason why you felt like this in childhood. There was a reason why you felt rejected. There was a reason why your mother acted the way you did, and so on and so forth. So in Vedanta, when we are encouraged to look at and do dosha darshanam, seeing the limitations of the human condition, a lot of us unconsciously start to do dosha darshanam in people. Then you start to hate people. I have known many people like this. Okay, they feel very elevated because they can point the limitations of who is not acting according to dharma and who is not understanding Vedanta properly, and so on and so forth. So if I start to see the mind as an instrument, then on what basis can I judge myself on the basis of the condition of the mind? Because of course with the karma yoga buddhi, the values, the attitudes, and so on and so forth, and doing drikdrishya viveka completely, it's very clear that I am not the mind. Of course, Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan Krishna also reminds us, prakasham cha pravrittim cha mohameva cha pandava na dveshti sampravrittani na nivrittani kankshati. So all these things can occur. Prakasham, brightness can be there, pravrittim can be there, activity, even moha can be there, confusion. But the wise one does not have any dvesha for the moha. Oh, I got confused even after so many years of Vedanta, or so on and so forth. Or wow, my meditation was brilliant, or whatever it is. Okay, nor does a person long for that which has gone away, because you stop defining yourself by the condition of the mind. And then the last thing I want to highlight is that modern psychology is based on pratyaksham and anumanam, perception and inference, and of course to some extent arthapatti, whereas Vedanta is shabda pramana. So modern psychology to a great extent can help us with mala, our impurities, raga, dvesha, and so on. vikshepa also, the projections we have on people, but the way in which it is used in Vedanta is we see the presence of Ishvara, we see Dharma as the manifestation of Ishvara, and therefore it becomes a very beautiful journey of self-growth. Both in modern psychology as well as Vedanta, there is, the relationship with the Guru is a very necessary. At the same time, it can be a very complicating relationship, okay? Because almost always one tends to project on the Guru. Same thing, one projects on the therapist also. So it's all your fault. Why did you tell me this? Why did you not tell me this? I could have avoided a problem, and so on and so forth. I would like we project on Bhagavan also. It's all your fault. You didn't know your job and you gave me all these situations. So we avoid this temptation to, go into the modern psychology mold and look at what is it that the Shastra is telling me. Because there is already the resolution of individuality, and therefore there is an appreciation of surrender. And you enjoy the surrender, you understand what it means, and so on. So, if we focus too much on the psychology in Vedanta, then it will be very much like the traditional example of the butter coming up as you are churning for the butter, and the butter has come and it needs to be scooped up, but you are so busy doing your sadhana. Oh, I want antakarna shuddhi, antakarna naishchalyam, I want a purification of my mind, I want steadiness of the mind, I am so obsessed with my sadhana. Well, the butter has come and butter has gone, jnana phalam will not be there. So we have the right perspective that psychology in Vedanta is really very, very important for self-growth, for adhikaritvam, and tools, techniques, methods from modern psychology can be used very judiciously. It's best if your guru suggests what to focus on and what not to. And of course, we see that all the self-growth that one can possibly have is really for self-discovery. Because one is already muktaha and one is already anantaha. So we don't need anything else, much less modern psychology, to point that out to us. So with the right perspective, we can enjoy it, we can use it well, and we can claim the truth of what Vedanta reveals to us. With that, my best wishes again to everyone. Om Tat Sat.
Thank you, Swamini. You have enlightened us on the difference between the Western and Vedanta psychology, Indian and Western psychology. But definitely, as Vedanta students, we can benefit from the Western concept, provided we see the limitations of the Western concept. Thank you, Swamini ji. This has been most enlightening, and I'm sure our students would like to hear more of the